So we're going to talk to one of the founding members and original lead singer of one of the most successful bands in music, the Hollies. They had their first hit 60 years ago and in total achieved 30 chart singles, including 2 number ones, and 23 hits in America. Allan Clarke and his childhood friend Graham Nash began singing together in Manchester while still at primary school. They started a skiffle group. As a duo, they modelled themselves on the Everley brothers and called themselves the Hollies later because of their admiration for Buddy Holly. After Graham left the band to go to America in 1968, Allan also departed in 1971 to go solo, but he rejoined in 1973. He retired from the music industry in 1999 in order to care for his wife who had cancer and because he had issues with his vocal cords. But he's just released a brand new solo album at the age of 81. And Graham Nash, also 81, sings on several of the songs. It's a great pleasure to welcome to the programme on BBC Three Counties Radio the amazing Allan Clarke.
It's nice to be here. Thanks for the amazing. Yeah.
You're a legend, really. It has to be said, aren't you?
Well, I've been around a long time. That's how I put it. I've been around a long time.
So the new album is the follow-up to Resurgence, which came out in 2019, and that was your first solo record for almost 30 years. I guess that most people, when they reach 80, want to put their feet up. So what inspired you to write and record again, Allan?
Well, it was more of a surprise to me than it was to anybody else, to be quite honest. It was COVID, and a lot of people, as myself, didn't know what to do with themselves. We were able to go out for walks and things like that, but I did need something to do during the day. And I decided to write lyrics, which I started, and I tried to put a guitar to it. And that sounded okay. And then my wife said, well, maybe you should take that a little bit further. Well, after being retired for 18 years at that particular time, I hadn't been doing anything on my computer of any merit until I actually noticed GarageBand. I didn't know what it was, to be quite honest. So I got my son up, who teaches performing arts, and he showed me how to get a couple of tracks up to get this one song down. And I quite surprised myself. Well, that went on doing 4 tracks, then 6 tracks, putting the song down and then taking it to a friend of mine, Francis Haynes, who put it all together and made it sound even better. And we enjoyed ourselves making that particular track. And I had no idea that it was going to go any more than that. But I had written about 10 songs, which, again, I was very surprised with myself. And then the CEO of BMG rang me, said, come down, let's have dinner, which I did. He said, right, I want to release it as an album. And I thought, wow, why? Why? And he said, well, because I love it and I think other people will like it. So get on with it. I did finish the album with Francis. And it was acclaimed as being something quite new from somebody quite old. And I surprised myself and everybody else. It went very well, Resurgence. And I think that actually made me want to do more writing. That's what it was. I started enjoying doing that again and actually getting into being an engineer, being a semi-producer. And I just carried on writing and decided to do another album. But I wanted to get Graham involved. And so in our meetings over the past 3 years, we were always saying, well, when are we going to do it? Graham was, well, when we've got time. Anyway, I got him down to listening to a song which I wrote, which is called I'll Never Forget, which is about our not being able to get together to do this album, or would it be a good idea to do this album? Would we sound any good by doing it? What sort of songs are we going to write? And once we went all over those sort of things and I sent him the song, he says, okay, that's it, let's start doing it. And that was the start of I'll Never Forget.
Well, let's play then the title track from the brand new album by Allan Clarke, and this is called I'll Never Forget. It's BBC Three Counties Radio across beds, hearts and bucks. I think that's terrific. I'll Never Forget by Allan Clarke, the title track of his brand new album featuring Graham Nash, of course, like Allan, once of the Hollies. So you're talking about getting back together. I think it took a 5-year process. But the song, it seems to me, is also suggesting you being grateful for all those wonderful good times in the 60s, but accepting that you maybe can't bring them back.
Well, that was the idea of the song, that maybe we couldn't bring them back, but we won't know unless we try. But, I did say to Graham as I was going through it, he said to me, this is going to be your solo album. He said, because I'm enjoying putting the harmonies on what's coming from you rather than me, the way that Graham was writing that particular time. and still is actually. He's very much writing songs about what's happening at the moment. And my voice wouldn't have helped those songs that Graham was writing because of that, the way he writes songs. So he said, let this be your solo album. And I said, you got to write something. So I said, I'll give you 2 weeks. And then he went away and he came back and it was 2 weeks. And he came up with Buddy's Back, which is a story about Graham and I when we first heard Buddy Holly on the radio. And it put us on the way to doing rock and roll.
Buddy's Back, a song written by Graham Nash and featuring him and my special guest here on BBC Three Counties Radio, Allan Clarke, and taken from Alan's brand new album, I'll Never Forget. What was it like then, working with Graham Nash again after all of these years? And were you in the same studio?
No, I wish we had been, because then we could have written songs together. But because of COVID, I wrote the songs and then I sang the songs. Then I would send it over to Graham. And if he liked the song, then he would put the harmony on of the parts that he suggested where it should be, then sent it back to me. Then I would go down to the studio where Francis is, my producer, and we would work on the songs and mix them and produce them. And it went on like that for about a year and a half. And we finally finished it last June. Again, my friend from BMG, Hartwig, says, I will release this and it's going to be great to hear you and Graham doing what you did so well where we were together. I wanted to capture that sound that we had when we did sing together in the Hollies. I know that Graham once said that he was quite annoyed that when he left, he didn't expect me to go on and get a couple of number ones with songs like Ian Heavy and The Air That I Breathe. And he was tongue-in-cheek when he said it, but I knew what he meant.
Has your voice changed, though, down the years? Some might say that perhaps you don't sound like you did or do on Holly's songs and Holly's records.
Well, let's face it, when I recorded all those songs, they went up to 1974, which was The Air That I Breathe, which was the last hit for the Hollies. And we went on doing tours and things like that. And when you've been touring for 35 years, doing like 2.5-hour shows, it's got to be a strain on one's vocal cords. And that's the reason why I left in 1999, because I wasn't reaching the right notes. It wasn't true for me to actually go out there and try and sing them, because it did start to sound like I was losing my voice. So the idea then was for me to leave the group and let the group carry on. That wasn't the only thing. My wife got cancer for the second time. So, I didn't have to make my mind up very quickly what I needed to do. And that was, I needed to be here with Jenny to see her through whatever was going to happen. But it's great, she got through it. And now, we're 59 years married now.
I know, that's amazing. It's incredible.
It is. Even I think it's incredible. But there you go.
But did you have any operations or surgery on the vocal cords at that time?
No, I did try. I went down every avenue. I went to vocal specialists and people about doing something with my vocal cords inside, maybe stretching them, adding to them and things like that. I only started looking into that when I thought there might be a reason for me to carry on. But there was no success with any of the guys, and they just said that your voice is getting deeper and you're never going to hit those notes again. So no, you shouldn't do it, because you're going to strain them so much you just won't be able to talk. So I took their advice. But, I've got a lower voice. It's there, but it's strong. And being now for the past 5 years with Francis doing this sort of stuff, he's stretched me quite a bit while we've been doing the writing and the singing of the songs. There are notes that I can reach now, but they're nowhere near the ones that I had to do with The Ain't Heavy or The Air That I Breathe. And a lot of the Holly songs, which were quite high. But, when I sang them, I was in my 20s, which was a long time ago.
Let's play another track from the new album then, Allan. Tell me about Moving On. I think this is terrific as well.
Again, because I was writing the album now, I had to think of putting things in that may have happened or did happen with Graham and I, going up to the point when he left. And we were both on the same sort of journey. We were just two kids with two guitars, wondering what was going to happen. We were doing it for fun to start off with. And then things happened within our lifetime that made us a step closer to actually becoming, dare I say, famous in my 20s. And what happened after that when he left. Again, it's all of the ifs and maybes in that song. But, it's a journey. It's a journey we've both taken. And it's just like when we got back together again, it's like looking for another ride and not knowing whether it was going to be successful or not. But it has.
That's Allan Clarke with Graham Nash on backing vocals, a song called Moving On, taken from the brand new Allan album, which is called I'll Never Forget. The album cover, Allan, features you photographed with the Gibson guitar that was given to you, I think, in 2010 by the Buddy Holly Education Foundation. That's been played by Buddy, has it?
No. What it is was that Graham rang me up and said he's a patron of the Buddy Holly Education Foundation, which was newly formed at that time. And what they wanted to do was to give a copy of a guitar that Buddy Holly used to play quite a lot. And it's a Gibson with a body of leather around it, which he tooled and etc. And what they did, they took the frets out of the original and put a fret in each of the first 25 guitars put out. And Graham rang me and says, well, we've got one, I've got one and you've got one, but you've got yours for life. I said, well, why have I got it for life? He says, well, you're not working anymore. So, and he said, oh, by the way, he said, it's okay because Phil Everley got his for life as well, which was great. The way that things like keep coming together about the Everley brothers and ourselves. It seems to be crossing lines, the way through our career. So that is the one that I write most of my songs on. It's a great guitar to play. And then every time I come up into my studio now, I get the guitar down and I always go through Peggy Sue before I start doing anything else. It's a great thing that they gave me one of these. And the Buddy Holly Education Foundation is a wonderful charity who are helping anybody who wants to get into music but doesn't have the means for doing that. So more the merrier.
You write quite personally, I think, because there's a track on there called You Need Somebody to Save You. There's one called Who Am I? The lyric, Is there anybody out there? Throw me a line, I'm slowly going under. And then You Shine a Light, didn't think I was worth saving. Is that all connected to the bad times that maybe you've gone through with your wife, Jenny?
Yes, a lot of the time. Yeah, there are things that have happened in my lifetime that have made me low and things that have made me high. Especially I'll Shine a Light is a tribute to Jenny, putting up with the bad times. And you go back and you think of things in your lifetime that you wish you'd never done and things that you wish you had done. And like In the Presence of You, again, that's about Jenny. It's quite a personal song. But when I wrote that, I was wanting to people to sort of identify, if they could identify with that by having a loving relationship with whoever they might be, which is constant. That's why I wrote that one. You Need Someone to Save You is my little dig at, about saving the planet. I don't think one individual could do that on their own. So it's everybody that's got to get themselves together in one voice and say we've got to do something about it. Because if we don't, we have to go and live in Scotland. And that's what find a mountain to climb on. I hope it doesn't happen. I know we get it all together. But that's just my addition to anybody who wants to do anything about what's happening.
When the bells are ringing and there's no surprise, come on, people, open up your...
Allan Clarke and a song called You Need Somebody to Save You from his new album I'll Never Forget, here on BBC Three Counties Radio. So was it fun to make? I mean, you enjoyed yourself as well as sort of opening up your heart and bearing your soul in places.
No stress whatsoever. When someone actually puts a track down and looking at the lyrics, the emotion in the playing that he did of the songs, he knew what I was writing about. So I was able to put my emotions into his emotions with the arrangements of what I wrote.
What does Graham Nash think of it? And has it been or will it be released in the States too?
Well, Graham has done an album and it's being released next month. And Buddy's Back is actually on his album as well. But it's his way of doing it. I haven't heard Graham's album yet. He hasn't sent me one, so I'll have to tell him to do that. But we've always respected each other and what we do in the way that we do it. He went down one path and I've gone down the other. And this one has just gone a long way around and we're meeting in the middle with this album.
Graham Nash is touring extensively right now in the States, right the way through to the summer. He really is a workaholic, I would suggest. And he's got 4 dates, I think, over here in August and September, including playing at the Moseley Folk Festival in Birmingham. Yeah. Do you think that he might invite you to come on stage for a song or two?
Well, he's done it before. I don't know why he doesn't do it, especially if I go up to Birmingham, I'll probably be dragged on stage
But you'd be up for that, would you?
Yeah, just a couple of songs. Yeah, I'd probably do that if I was invited.
Do you reflect on the fact that you just released this album and you're now, like Graham Nash, born in 1942 and you're both 81?
Yeah, I don't feel it. I'd like to think that I don't look it. People tell me that I'm fit, I don't smoke. It's one of those things. You grow into a person and I think you're a lot wiser, but you don't have to spread it around because you might not be. But it's just the way that you feel. In my head, I'm still 21. But I know in the body I've got, it's an 80-year-old body, but it's a good body. So I really don't think of me being a certain age. It's down to what your attitude is towards life and the way that you live it. And my life has been great since 1979 when I stopped drinking and I stopped doing a lot of things that wasn't really doing me, and got on with living a life in a different way. And it's worked incredibly well.
I was broken down with a heart where I'll be free.
Well, let's go back a little bit, if we may, because you and Graham Nash were best friends from primary school, and you began performing in the 1950s. That was at school, was it? And do you remember that?
Well, no, it was at school when we were 6. We were put in front of the school when, you have assemblies in the morning, and we were heard singing together, and they actually put us up on stage in front of the assembly, and we sang "The Lord is My Shepherd."
And they knew that there was something special and magical between the two of you and the way your voices blended, even when you were 6?
Yeah. I mean, he started singing harmony, and he didn't know why he started singing harmony, but maybe it was heaven sent, and we didn't actually go anywhere for that because we were kids, we were still playing kick can, out in the street and going to the park and making fools of ourselves.
In Salford.
Lonnie Donegan came along. He changed the world for a lot of people. I was playing skiffle. Everybody in England that I knew wanted a guitar and they wanted to do Rock Island Line. And Graham and I were actually the same. And when we actually got into playing music, learning the chords and doing it, we thought, well, this is great. We can do music together. I don't think I've ever heard anybody doing Rock Island Line with harmony. But me and Graham did it.
Well, you modelled yourself on the Everley brothers as well and worked as a duo under the name Ricky and Dane Young. Then you teamed up with a local band, the Four Tones, then joined another Manchester band, the Deltas, who at the time included one Eric Stewart, who was later to join the Mindbenders and 10cc. Then you changed the Deltas' name to the Hollies. At what point during all of that did you have this aching desire to become a professional full-time musician, Alan?
No, never. I was doing it for fun. I never thought in a million years that we'd actually do the same sort of stuff that we've been watching other people do on television and in movies all our lives. When I went on stage, I was there to do a good show, have a bit of a laugh, have a couple of pints afterwards, and then go home and start my job again in the morning.
Really? And Graham was the same, was he?
Yeah, he more or less did the same. I don't know what he did at night when he wasn't with me, but I don't suppose it was anything different than you do have to work in the day.
But you must have been that good to get a gig at the Cavern Club in Liverpool in 1962, where a producer from Parlophone, Ron Richards, saw you play and offered you an audition, right?
Yeah, he did. And we used to play the Cavern quite a lot because they really liked us over in Liverpool. And, we'd be there with the Beatles. So, there was no competition between us. But when the Beatles came along and they had a hit with Love Me Do, and I'll never forget when that actually came out. I loved that song and the way that Paul sang it. It got in the charts and, as you say, all the record companies wanted to have their own Beatles in a way. And we were there at the right time, in the right formation, doing the right stuff. Ron actually said, come down to EMI recording studios. We went down and we did the full Monty on what we did on stage. And he said, right, you signed.
Mary had a little lamb. His fleece was white as snow. Yeah, won't you come and love me too? I'll shake now. I'm gonna find her. I'm gonna find her. I'm gonna find her. Yeah.
You were doing mainly cover versions at that time. The first two hits were by the Coasters, Ain't That Just Like Me and Searching. And then Stay was the cover of the Maurice Williams and the Zodiac song, and then, of course, Just One Look, Doris Troy. So you'd been listening to a lot of stuff.
Well, it was normal to us because that's what we were singing when we go out on the road. You know, I mean, when I say on the road, Graham and I were just a duo originally until Pete Bocking came along and said you need a guitarist, and we turned into a rock and roll band virtually in that week. So we had to sort of listen to what was happening around us, and there was a lot of good stuff coming from America. And in Manchester, when the ships used to come in, the guys on the ships were bringing these singles out for people who they knew. And it happened in Liverpool, and like John and Paul got onto those sort of songs. Everybody that was in a rock and roll band was singing Twist and Shout. And we made it our own because it was rough. You go out on stage, you've got 2 amps, you've got 2 guitars, a bass, and a drummer. That's what everybody had. They sang all those sort of songs, like our 2 hits, like Searching and Just Like Me. It was like an American invitation to get in on the act that they had.
Just one look, that's all it took, yeah. Just one look, that's all it took, yeah. Just one look.
So once you got signed up and you got to management and you got promotion, would I be right in suggesting that your progress was very quick? Success came very quickly?
Sure, virtually overnight. I don't know what kind of job I was in at that particular time, but I know that I closed down Howell's Mill, cotton mill that was there. That's where I worked for a couple of years. And I closed it down, and virtually within like 3 months, I had a hit record.
And not just a hit record. The Hollies had hit after hit after hit every year from 1963 all through the 60s right up to 1974. I think 30 in all in the UK. It's a staggering record. And I just wonder what you make of all of those wonderful songs like Yes I Will, I'm Alive, I Can't Let Go, Bus Stop, 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 On a Carousel, and so on.
Well, I must admit, I do. I sometimes, wish I could still sing all that, but, I can't. But I know when I went home and told my father that I was turning professional, he said to me, well, these sort of things only last about 5 years. So what you want to do is save as much money as you can. And then when you've finished, you can go with your brother and you can start your own firm of carpentry people. And I said, okay, Dad. So I'm still waiting.
So your parents must have been so pleased. Had they sort of funded your purchase of instruments and amplification?
They did. Well, I remember my dad bought me a bike because I started work and I could go to work on a bike. And I went with my bike into Manchester. I think it was Shude Hill, where there was this electronic shop, and I swapped my bike for an amplifier. And when my dad was not too pleased about that, but I thought it was something we needed. We needed to go electric, which we did with our 2 Guyatone guitars and this little squawking amp on the floor, which we took with us everywhere we went.
So when you got famous fairly quickly, photo shoots, appearing on the radio, a bit of TV, in magazines, pop magazines and the Fame, and travelling. I mean, the record company were presumably investing in you, but they wanted their pound of flesh. Did they work you really hard, and was a time when you got fed up with fatigue and so on, or not?
No, when you're that young, nothing phases you when you're that young. And, you're introduced into a different kind of life. It was exciting, and it was musical, and it was the 60s, for crying out loud. I mean, everything like that happened in the 60s sort of disappeared towards the late 70s. Everybody went into flower power and things like that. But the 60s to me was a period of my life which was going out and seeing the world and meeting people that you never thought that you'd ever meet in your life, like the Everley brothers, like going to see Elvis live.
Did you meet Elvis as well then?
I nearly met him, let's put it that way. I was using his drummer, but I think his name was Tuck. And he was working on my album with me in Los Angeles. And he said, why don't you come down and see Elvis? And I said, that'd be nice. So we got VIP tickets to see Elvis. And we were in the front row, and he was about 2 feet away from me. Jenny, my wife, was with me. And when he takes those scarves off and rubs them on the forehead and then hands them out. Well, he stood right in front of me, and he took his scarf off, and I said in my mind, I'm going to have that. And he took it off and he reached and put it out, and it was about 2 inches away from me. And I was just about to grab it when somebody pulled me straight back into my seat. And it was Jenny, and she said, "Don't be silly, Alan." She said, "That's for women."
Well, you met the Everley brothers, as you say, and you, I think, and Graham helped to make their 1966 album, Two Yanks in England, which featured Everley's cover songs of songs you wrote, right?
Yeah, ridiculous things happen in your life. I was in a singing booth with Don, and he was actually doing one of our songs, and he got to a line which he sang, and he stopped the recording, and he turned to me and he said, "Hey, Al, how do you sing that line again?" So if one of the Everley brothers asks you how to sing a line, it's magic.
And didn't Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones and Elton John play as session players on that Everley's album too?
Well, that was before the exposure to arenas and things like that. We were all in the little bubble of pop that was happening at that particular time. So there wasn't any sort of greatness, if that's the right word. Everybody was available to do what they wanted to do with you. And yeah, Elton was there. They were all there. But we were in awe of the Everley brothers. That's why they were there, and that's why we were there. It was the Everley brothers. You'd do anything for them.
Don't run and hide from the people. Don't run and only hurting yourself.
We've been speaking to Allan Clarke here on BBC Three Counties Radio. His new album, I'll Never Forget, is out now. 11 songs featuring the vocals too of Graham Nash, once of the Hollies. We could talk about his decision to go abroad and leave. We could talk about you leaving the Hollies and then coming back, but I think we've run out of time. But my calculations suggest that you, Alan, recorded 22 albums with the Hollies, almost 90 singles, many EPs, multiple compilation and greatest hits albums and live albums. Now, 9 solo albums. It's a staggering back catalogue. And your place in popular music history has long been established. People will be playing Hollies tracks, I'm sure, in 50 years, 100 years' time. I just wonder how you feel about that. And maybe if you're driving along and a Hollies song comes on the radio, what goes through your mind?
Well, it becomes something which is a normal day occurrence. I know that when I go down to do the breakfast and things like that, and usually The Air That I Breathe comes on, or He Ain't Heavy, and I do turn it up loud. Not every time. I listen to what I'm hearing, and I'm thinking, wow, that is a high voice. But those are great times in an era which was before. And now I'm working in an era of what can I do now? And I won't say I'm getting away with it, but, it's working. So, what can I say? I'm enjoying it at 100%. Oh, I think I was told this morning that the album is now number 6 in the charts, album charts. Never had that before. So that's a new one.
And what do you think is the best song that you've either written or co-written and recorded and sung on throughout this extensive career? Is there one? Is it The Air That I Breathe? Is it He Ain't Heavy or what?
You can talk about songs and you can say, oh yeah, one of my favourites is He Ain't Heavy because of the actual message that it has and how good it is for getting people together. I think that would probably be a hit every 15 to 20 years if they kept releasing it. I would suppose that The Air That I Breathe, again, is an example of a classic song. But my favourite song is Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress, which I wrote with Roger Cook. And it's just one of those things that you record without thinking it being a hit or anything. It was just a enjoyable thing to write. It took half an hour. And when I did take it to the boys, I played the guitar on it with Bernie and Bob, and then Tony put a bit of guitar on it. And then I did 2 vocals, and I took the first vocal, and that was it. The engineer put some slap echo on it and says, there you are, that's an album. Single. I left the group and I got a call one day from Freddie Beanstalk, who's a publisher. He said, I want to publish that song for you, Long Cool Woman. I said, why? And he said, because it's racing up the charts and we'd like to collect the money for you. So I said, yeah, go ahead.
Number 2 in America, almost a number 1.
Yeah, almost a number 1. I don't know what it was that was at the top there, but it didn't really matter. And it's one of those songs that's played mostly in the West, in America and things like that. And it's just one of those type of songs that if it comes on, people sort of hear the beat and it just makes them feel happy. Yeah, it's one of my songs that actually earned me some money Yes, the biggest, I think, but I don't like it for that. I like it because it's me. I like it because it's rock and roll, and I wrote one of the world's famous riffs at the front, and I don't know how.
Well, you've been very frank and open and honest and candid in our conversation, Allan. It's been an absolute joy and a pleasure to speak to you today. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for all this wonderful, glorious music that you've been producing and releasing over 60 years, the last 60 years. I grew up in the 60s listening to pirate radio, and I remember having a conversation with one of my brother's friends when I went to stay with him because my mother had pneumonia back in 1964. He was 8 years older than me, and we had this conversation in the garage about Just One Look, and I was about 8. And here we are, we're talking all these years later. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure, it really is, and thanks for having me on. It's really nice talking to you, man. Really is.